What carnism does, essentially, is to teach us to disconnect from our authentic thoughts and feelings when it comes to eating those animals we've learned to think of as edible. Now, carnism is a dominant belief system or ideology. That means that it's invisible and it's so widespread that its tenets, its teachings are literally woven through the very structure of society to shape norms, laws, beliefs, behaviors, etc., becoming institutionalized. It's embraced and maintained by all of the major social institutions. So, for example, when people study nutrition, they typically study carnistic nutrition. And when we're born into such an institutionalized system as carnism, we inevitably internalize it. Carnism becomes internalized. We learn to look at the world through the lens of carnism. Carnism literally shapes the way that we think and feel when it comes to eating animals. I'm going to show a short video that explains, is really quick, about 3 minutes long, that explains this concept of carnism and particularly internalized carnism.
This man is eating a golden retriever burger with cheese made from horse's milk on a bun glazed with canary's eggs. He doesn't feel disturbed though, because his brain is plugged into a matrix. Like in the movie The Matrix, this matrix keeps itself alive by remaining invisible to him. And it needs to make sure he continues eating these foods. It distorts his perceptions of reality, so he doesn't see a dead dog or secretions from horses or canaries. He just sees food. This is the matrix of carnism. Carnism is the invisible belief system that conditions us to eat certain animals, and to never question why we eat some animals but not others. Carnism distorts our perceptions of those species we've learned to classify as edible, so we see them as food and act accordingly. Carnism is why conscientious people end up supporting an industry that unnecessarily kills more animals in 1 week than the total number of people killed in all wars throughout history, and which is one of the largest contributors to climate change. The Matrix causes this man to be a passive consumer rather than an active citizen. Most people would recognize carnism as the global atrocity it is if they caught on to the fact that they're plugged into the carnistic matrix. They'd be its challengers rather than its supporters. So carnism teaches us to believe in myths, like the 3 N's of justification. Eating certain animals is normal, natural, and necessary. Or that farmed animals aren't individuals with personalities. So for example, we learn to believe that a pig is a pig and all pigs are the same. And carnism makes us feel defensive against anyone or anything that helps us catch on to the fact that we're in the carnistic matrix. Ever notice how you feel when you meet a vegan? The good news is that once we catch on to carnism, everything changes. It's not that we see different things, we see the same things differently. That's awareness. And the carnistic matrix is but one of many matrices we're plugged into. And although each matrix distorts our perceptions of a different kind of individual or group, they all affect us in the very same way. So once you understand how one matrix works, you understand how they all work. With awareness, you can choose what role you play in a system. You can become an ally.
Great. So just to clarify, the reason carnism distorts our perceptions is because carnism is a violent or oppressive system. It runs counter to core human values, values such as compassion and justice. And most people, even those who don't consider themselves animal lovers per se, nevertheless care about animals and would not willingly support an industry that causes them to suffer, especially when that suffering is utterly unnecessary. So what carnism does is it prevents us from recognizing the contradictions in our values and behaviors when it comes to eating animals. Now, the concepts that I'm talking about here, the psychology of carnism, essentially, that I'm briefly describing here, these concepts apply whether we're advocating veganism to support animal rights reasons or climate change, or even if we're advocating plant-based eating for health reasons. This defensiveness against the message tends to be quite similar. And what I'm talking about here as well with the psychology of carnism, it actually applies more broadly. My later research, after I wrote my doctoral dissertation and wrote Why We Love Dogs, was on the psychology of oppression more broadly. And so if you're interested in that, the psychology of oppression and social transformation more broadly, you can find information about this at powerarchy.org. So that was just a brief, very brief summary of the psychology of carnism and the psychology that causes people to be defensive against anything, essentially, any information that would help them get outside the carnistic box that they don't realize they're in.